Hey everyone, welcome back to my weekly outlook. So it is the 18th of November. As always, I'm going to go through the monthly, weekly timeframes fairly quickly because they don't change much, of course. So let's start here and get this done. So what do we have here on the monthly? Again, we've got our bullish dealing range, our bullish leg, right? So from this low to this high is our most recent price leg. Okay, so this is our dealing range, right, where price reacted from this imbalance after taking sell side liquidity and then became bullish, right, taking out buy side liquidity and ultimately moving in to this imbalance and order block up here, taking the buy side liquidity above these previous highs here. And also if we go back to this leg, you can see where I've written BSL, buy side liquidity, where in September we swept into that imbalance, also taking that previous high here, and we had that nice sort of high test doji candle, right? What happened then? October was a bearish month, and halfway through this month we aren't yet bearish, but I'm expecting a pullback to continue. Okay, so towards our discount of this dealing range. So I've got a discount drawn out here, and then I have our monthly draw on price. So for this monthly bearish pullback towards our discount, we have a BPR where we have this up close imbalance and down close imbalance overlapping each other, with also this bullish imbalance here which was left behind in the leg, and they overlap. So this is a fairly strong zone here for price to be drawn towards, is what I'm expecting price to do on a monthly time frame. And again, this could take months and months, so could well go on into the middle of next year for all we know, depending on how much price moves. Okay, so that's enough for the monthly. The main summary here is that within this bullish leg, I'm expecting that bearish pullback, which of course on the lower time frames would be a bearish trend. Okay, so let's go to the weekly and see how that looks for us. Now I think it's really obvious to see that the weekly hasn't been clear for us for a while. Since the start of the summer, since July, we're pretty much within this range here. But if we dive into the details, right, we can identify that in the middle of September, as we know, September closed as a high test doji. We had this nice weekly candle sweep of buy side liquidity, right, from above these previous weeks and months here into that imbalance, right, into that institutional level of 1.19, and it closed out as that nice high test which was highlighted, right, and began our bearish move, began our bearish monthly pullback. Okay, so in regards to the weekly, we are still in a bullish dealing range, so from this low to this high. Okay, so we are still in that bullish dealing range at the moment. It doesn't agree with, say, the daily or lower time frames that it's bearish just yet. Price is sort of being held here by this order block and imbalance area here. Right, we don't have any obvious POIs or PDAs like we do on some other time frames for the weekly to use. But if we concentrate on this fair value gap here, which is basically now become an inverted fair value gap, an inverse fair value gap, you can see the candle wick started to use it as support, and now we've started to use it as resistance. So this may be the only PDA that we could say we're looking at here, where price is now broken below, come back and retested, and we may now continue that bearish outlook. So what I'm expecting here, expecting weekly direction to drive lower, following the monthly pullback scenario to our draws of liquidity, right? So on the monthly, the draws of liquidity are here with that monthly imbalance high and our BPR. For the weekly, of course, we have targets along the way. We have our November sell side liquidity low here, which will be our draw of liquidity sort of for the coming week or weeks, depending on how long this takes to play out. And then our next source of clear liquidity would be the dealing range low, which is the August sell side liquidity low, right? So on the daily, this is our market maker sell model, right? This triangle here, which we'll see clearer once we get onto the daily. So for that monthly pullback to happen, we would expect this dealing range to break to make its way down towards this area here. So I think that's enough for the weekly. Everything's quite clear there. In terms of how unclear it is, right? We're in this sort of range here, but there's more clarity on the daily time frame. So let's go down to the daily and see what that looks like. Okay, so our daily picture, for those that have not seen it, this is what I refer to as a market maker sell model, right? We have our buy side curve here, which is essentially us building high lows, high highs, respecting mostly bullish PDAs, POIs, right? Creating that order flow. Okay, so the respect of bullish PDAs creates bullish order flow, right? And then we topped out where we expected to top out at this imbalance zone here on the monthly, which you can see we rejected quite clearly, and it started to create that monthly pullback, which is a daily bearish trend. And why is it a trend with bearish order flow? Because it is respecting bearish POIs or PDAs as well, right? So that's what we call the sell side curve, where it starts to now respect bearish PDAs, right? Violating those bullish ones and turning them into inverse imbalances, sometimes using them as resistance, which you'll see as we go through this. So we had the BPR respected, created a bearish leg and dealing range down, pulled back, respected bearish imbalance, order block, OTE zone, and this formerly bullish imbalance here, which price respected previously, it now broke below and used as resistance. Okay, then we created a new bearish dealing range leg here, pulled back to the OTE zone, inverse fair value gap, right? This was a resistance, this was a support, support, came back resistance, and we had a bearish BPR here, which price also spiked into before eventually creating a new bearish dealing range, right? So we had a reaction from our BPR here, which was a bullish PDA, right? Pulled back to a bearish BPR zone here, which was violated before, but now we seem to be respecting. More importantly, it's in the premium of this leg, the extreme premium. We came right up to the top of this leg, right? It's possible we may still break this dealing range and the trend change, but for now, we are still respecting bearish PDAs, right? On the daily, we still have a bearish outlook, a bearish market maker sell model, right? We're in this dealing range here. We are possibly rejecting this zone here, and we'll see where price goes. We're in the premium, so we expect price to continue following that monthly pullback and that daily trend, right? So with our main draw on liquidity for this week, this November sell side liquidity low here, right, to form another bearish dealing range leg to break this low and head towards 1st of August low, which would complete our market maker sell model. Right, and what we trade, of course, is the fractals on the lower time frames. So we would be, once this buy side curve here is created, looking for shorts in the sell side curve here. Same as up here with this triangle there and this smaller triangle here. All right, so that's what we look for while we're trending bearish, and you'll see these same patterns on the lower time frames. So I hope that's clear. I've repeated this on my previous videos, of course, because we're still using the same model to continue following that trend and trade here. We do have some SMT here because DXY has already completed its market maker buy model, right? Because it's the inverse of this. So this low took out this low on DXY, right? Which would be a high taking out the high. But for now, until this dealing range breaks, I don't believe that that is ruining this model. So unless this high gets taken out, then we can start to give a bit more weight to the SMT and possible bullish euro dollar. With that said, let's go down to the 4 hour. Let's see how these lower time frames look in terms of our trading direction. So again, immediately obvious right now on the 4 hour, right? In regards to our daily bearish outlook, you can clearly see the lower time frame is bullish, right? So far, 4 hour doesn't look bearish at all. Our recent price action is just bullish order flow, respecting again bullish PDAs, right? Bullish order block and imbalance. Price goes on to make a new high. Bullish order block and imbalance. Price goes on to make a new high. Within these again are the fractal market maker buy models. So these are little triangles here, pulled back to a bullish order block area here, and then we created a buy side curve, right, taking out that sell side curve here. Sell side curve created here, bottomed out, buy side curve created, taking out that high. So then here potentially again, we have now created this larger sell side curve here, coming down to this bullish PDA. If we bottom out at this zone, we could potentially continue our bullish lower time frame order flow, taking out our previous weekly high and then go bearish, or we could break that daily dealing range high, which is here. So I've got this noted, these are low resistance highs, because you can see this sort of curve, this sort of trend line curve. Price didn't sweep these highs here before breaking down, say like it did here, where we took the sell side liquidity and then we started making that bullish order flow. So this is more of a stronger low formation than this weak high here. Same over here again, we've got a lower high quite close to this high, so it looks like low resistance liquidity. You can see how corrective this is, whereas this has quite a lot of momentum when we created this leg here. So we may still create another market maker buy model fractal here on the lower time frames, taking out the previous weekly high first. All right, so lower time frame clearly respecting bullish PDAs, therefore order flow is still bullish and not aligned with daily time frame. So we're going to look out for possible bullish continuations upwards, and we're waiting for these order flows here, these lows here, to break to align with the daily. Okay, and then we can look to create a sell side curve, and also that again would be another small fractal where we can have another market maker sell model being created, right? Buy side curve, sell side curve. So I hope that was clear. So let's go down to the 1 hour. Let's see how that's looking for us. So 1 hour again, you can see the fractals are even clearer. You can see these market maker buy models, right? Albeit some of them are a bit messy, but we've pulled back down to the order block, bottomed out, and eventually created a buy side curve after a sell side curve, taking out the buy side liquidity. Another mini run here. We've created this sell side curve, found support, and then created that buy side curve, taking out the high. Okay, so this is a much larger one here. So if we do go on to create another market maker buy model here, we could follow that up on the buy side curve, looking for longs towards this previous weekly high as a short-term draw on liquidity, right, before we maybe find a high of the week to go short. The dangers here are, because it's against the daily, so if you can see, we're creating weak structures on both sides. Like we said, these highs here are pretty weak, and those old highs here as well, these low resistance highs. But if you look at the structures we're creating here, even though we're creating bullish order flow, we've left these three lows here, which is basically a trend line, right, of weak, low resistance sell side liquidity that price could come and take out at any time. So I'm not looking for any longs just yet. Would need more order flow. And then if we look to the left again, we've got another weak low here. There was no sweep of that sell side liquidity. A low like this would be a lot better, but look here, more weak lows because we're building up trend line liquidity here, trend line liquidity here sort of thing, with these lows and these lows here. So price could possibly at any time just start following that daily order flow and break down, right? But lower time frame, as I said, is still bullish with our order flow, so potentially we are going to create another market maker buy model fractal, but it might not complete that market maker buy model fractal because the daily is against us. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so you can see this gray box here is for the Asia. We've just taken out the high, so we may come down and purge this low resistance sell side liquidity here and here before any significant up move. So we'll see. So let's go down to the M15 in detail, see what that looks like. But just remember, this is a weekly outlook, so all of this may be concentrated towards today and the short term, but remember the larger picture from that daily time frame, weekly time frame, monthly time frame as well. You can see my notes here immediately. Need clarity at the moment, price could go either way, and 15 order flow needed. So what's happening this morning? So yesterday you can see we was bearish the whole day. We was actually respecting bearish PDAs till we found this low here, and then we went sideways into the Asia session and kill zone, and now it looks to be like we're respecting bullish order flow, right? Because we've got bullish POIs, PDAs that are being respected. So we created this small high here, respected this imbalance and order block, created another high there, creating that Asia high, pulled back very correctively to this order block and imbalance that was left here during the Asia session, and then during our window here, right in the middle of the London session, you can see we've had a really big bullish close 15-minute candle, right, taking out the Asia range high and this buy side liquidity trend line here. So we are pulling back now, so it'd be interesting to see how price reacts to this imbalance it left behind and new M15 order block, right? So once this is established here, we'll see if this price bottoms out around this zone here, and then we'll check the M5 etc. to see if we get any good continuation of order flow to the upside to look like we're going to do this market maker buy model on the lower time frames. However, right now there are a lot of risks because, as I said, we have this Asia sell side liquidity and all of these lows here from the evening yesterday that are basically weak low resistance lows. So we need to see how price reacts to this area, and if we create more order flow to then start looking for our movement towards these highs. So back up to the daily to wrap this up. so we can remember the big picture, right? What we're looking for, we are looking for this continuation of the daily market maker sell model. So I hope that's clear. Any questions, let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.